Tomieka, you do this every year, and I just want to tell you I appreciate it. You know, it's 8:30 on a Monday morning, and you could be doing other things. One of the things I usually ask our guests to do is just to introduce yourselves to the students, give them a little bit of a sort of an overview of your background and how you ended up at Mercer and how you ended up doing what you do, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your day-to-day life.
Good morning. I am a military brat. My dad was stationed at Robbins. I went off to college at Clark Atlanta University and came back to Mercer for law school. As Professor Longden indicated, I did interview for a Dan Bradley. I will say, use your career services office to the fullest, because every job that I got when I was in law school was through the career services office. And I interviewed for that, got the position, fell in love with the job, and here, almost 12 years later, I'm still with Georgia Legal Services. So I think it was a really good decision.
Tell the students a little bit about your clients. I mean, who do you represent, and how do they get to you? What kinds of problems do they have?
Primarily, I've been labeled the domestic violence guru in our office. So I would say probably 90% of my cases are representing victims of domestic violence, male and female victims, as well as teenagers now. But we also represent elderly clients. You know, I represent the little old lady who is being kicked out of public housing because the housing authority says that there's a cleanliness issue, and she's 82 years old, and you know, she may not be able to clean as well as some of the other tenants. We also help people with Social Security cases. We help the mothers with the food stamp issues. Their food stamps have been disconnected or have been terminated because they didn't meet their recertification appointment. Well, you know, they don't get the backstory that the mother was on the phone for 2 hours waiting to do this recertification, and then the phone goes dead, and that this has happened 4 times. So through no fault of her own, she misses her appointment and her benefits are terminated and she can't feed her children. So we do all civil litigation, no criminal stuff, and we do housing, we do public benefits, we do Social Security, we do domestic violence, we do estate planning, we do the wills and the power of attorneys. Let me just give you one tidbit before I forget, because this never ceases to amaze me. I do some interviewing for Georgia Legal Services, and we had a Mercer student come into an interview for a position with Georgia Legal Services, and he said, I just don't like working with the elderly. They just creep me out. Old folks just really creep me out. Know a little bit about where you're interviewing before you say stuff like that, because especially when you know that we have an elder contract and all we do for that contract is represent elderly people, it doesn't go over well.
Good advice. You say we, and I think the students need to know how many people are included in we and what your supposed coverage is for indigent representation in Georgia.
Right now, the Macon office, we are regional offices, so Georgia Legal Services is a statewide law firm broken down into regions. The Macon office covers 23 counties in central Georgia, and we have the whopping number of 5 attorneys and 2 paralegals to cover that service area. Almost impossible. There are a lot of things that we can't do, and we'll talk about that a little later, but we do the best that we can with what we have. So 5 lawyers covering 23 counties, and what we do is a lot of our clients don't have transportation. A lot of them are in rural communities. They can't get to Macon, so we have to go to them. So oftentimes I find myself interviewing people in nursing homes or meeting with people in the hallway at the courthouse, or I go to their homes. And this freaks some people out. They're like, you have to go into the projects? Are you serious? Aren't you scared? Aren't you afraid? Aren't you this? Aren't you that? It takes a certain kind of person to do the type of work that I do. I'm not afraid. You know, I do what I have to do, and I represent my clients to the best of my ability. But you will find yourself meeting in some strange places. I meet with clients in Starbucks, if there's a Starbucks, and of course in Wrightsville, Georgia, there is no Starbucks. So it's the local gas station that has a cafe inside the gas station, and that's where we might meet to execute whatever documents I need to prepare for them.
Now, these are all clients who can't afford anything in terms of lawyers or much of anything else often. Where does the funding come from
Great
for
question.
Georgia Legal Services?
A lot of our funding comes from specified grants, whether it's a domestic violence grant or, as I spoke of earlier, an elder law grant. We seek different grants that kind of fit the needs of the clients that we serve. We also get a lot of support from our local bar associations as well as the state bar association. We get some federal funding and very little state funding and private donations.
Yes, some chunk of that funding is IOLTA
Yes.
money, okay, and the students probably wouldn't know what that is, but that's interest on lawyers' trust accounts. And Jim Elliott's going to tell the story on Friday about how that came about, because he's the one that caused it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting story. Is there a typical day for you? What's on your desk today, I guess is a way of looking
On
at
my
it.
desk for today is a stack of about 300 pages that I need to read and have prepared for a racial justice conference that Georgia Legal Services is hosting starting Wednesday in Decatur. We'll be there Wednesday through Friday, and I have been asked to facilitate, be a panel discussion leader, and a moderator on each day. I have something to do, so I've got to have all this material prepared. In addition to that, I have a client that I have to execute a power of attorney for. I am preparing for a conference that I am facilitating tomorrow night in Dublin. We are doing a domestic violence awareness couples conference, and I've been asked to co-facilitate that. This afternoon, I have a meeting with the Boys and Girls Club because I do have a life outside of Georgia Legal Services, and that is highly encouraged. I'm a board member with the Central Georgia Boys and Girls Club, so we've got to take care of the business of Boys and Girls Club. I have to follow up with some clients that I didn't get finished with last week because of the wonderful snowstorm that we had that gave us a few days off out of the office. So there is no typical day. I love when I get asked that question. In any given week, I could literally be in 4 different counties in 4 different courtrooms, handling 4 different matters. That's one of the things that I love about Georgia Legal Services. You don't really get pigeonholed unless you kind of want to be pigeonholed. And so I say that I am the domestic violence guru. That's something that I love to do. That's what I'm good at. So I get a lot of domestic violence work. That has spun off into the other thing that I love to do, which is going out and speaking to groups. And so I do a lot of public speaking for the program throughout the state. I train law enforcement officers, I train judges, I train other attorneys and legal advocates on domestic violence issues. I help people become certified to represent victims of domestic violence and to help them complete the paperwork that they need to get protective orders and things like that. So I'm speaking. February is the busiest month for me. It's Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So February and October are very heavy because they are domestic violence focused. So I'm all over the place. I'm doing interviews on the radio station and the television station, and I'm speaking at this conference and that conference, and I'm being pulled in 15 different directions, but I absolutely love it. I say this every year, and I still mean it. I won't say it if I don't mean it, so I hope you don't ever have me here one day and I leave this part off, but I absolutely love my job. I love what I do. I could not have made a better choice. And like I said, it's not for everyone. I'm the only person who came into Georgia Legal Services with my class that's still with the program. So in our office, you kind of either are in for the long haul or you stay for 2 or 3 years and you're gone. My direct supervisor has been with the program for 20 years. Our managing attorney has been with the program for 30 years. I'm coming on 12 years. And then we have what I call the baby lawyers in our office that have been there for 5 years or less. So you kind of got to love what you do.
What does it take to do this job and to get out of it what you get out of it? Because, I mean, you've been at it 12 years, long time. What kind of person, sticks to it?
You have to have patience. You really, people come to law school and they ask you, well, why'd you come to law school? I said what everybody else said, because I really want to help people. Some people really mean that, and some people just say it because they know it sounds good, and they really didn't want to say, well, because I didn't get accepted into med school, so I figured this was the next best option. But you really want to have to help people, because a lot of my day is spent helping people. We have this big push now that the law has changed on how you get your driver's license renewed in Georgia. You have to have a birth certificate. Well, that may not be a big deal for many of you. You all are young folks. You probably have access to your birth certificate, or your parents have it for you. But my 80-year-old clients that don't necessarily need a driver's license, but they need a Georgia ID so that they can do their banking business, they don't have their birth certificates. They don't know where their birth certificates are. So I'm spending a great deal of my time these days helping them locate birth certificates. If they don't have one, then what we're having to do is go into court and do name changes for these people because, you know, my last client gets an ID and let's just say, or his birth certificate says John Doe. Well, he's gone by William Chandler Doe his entire life. He's never seen his birth certificate. He had no idea that that's the name that was on his birth certificate. And so now I have to go into court to change his name legally to what he's been going by his entire life so that he can then go down to the DMV to get an ID. And this is an expense, this is a lot of time, but these elderly people don't have the money that it would take to get this done, and they don't know how to do it on their own, but that's the kind of thing that I have to do, so it kind of takes some hand-holding. Or when you have the little old lady that comes in and says, this credit card company won't stop harassing me, and they're telling me that they're going to take me to jail if I don't pay this $289 Sears bill, can you help me? And she brings in a Kroger bag full of stuff. Just different bills and notices and letters, and she just drops it on my desk and says, I need you to figure this out. I can't get frustrated and say, I don't have time for that. Do you realize that I have 5 other clients coming in today and I have to speak tonight and I have to be here, I have to be there. I have to give her my undivided attention and I have to go through whatever she has in this bag to figure out what's going on and get somebody to make copies of it for me so that I can have it, because there may be an issue there. They may be breaking the law in the way that they are contacting her, and absolutely by threatening to put her in jail. But just on the surface, someone might hear that and say, oh, it's no big deal. It's just a $289 bill. You know, just pay it. You made the bill, just pay it. But you have to understand that there are defenses and there are attorney's fees that can be had by private attorneys who would agree to take these types of cases. But I've got to get to the meat of what the problem is to figure out what she has, what her rights are.
It's interesting because this has come up a couple of times in our discussion groups, that just the fact that you are overworked or you have a whole lot of files and a whole lot of cases doesn't mean that the one in front of you gets any less
Absolutely.
service than they would if they were your only one.
Absolutely.
It's always the same, and you've got to be organized and patient. Law school doesn't teach patience. Did you find that we taught you patience?
No. And one of the big things that I remember as a baby lawyer myself, it was a really strange week. I got 2 cases in, and both of the clients had mental health issues. And I went to my boss and I said, listen, you all didn't prepare me for this. I don't know how to deal with these folks. They're unmedicated. They're all over the place. One minute my client's telling me, I love you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. And the next minute she's cursing me out, telling me I'm stupid and I'm working for the government and I'm just trying to, you know, take what she has, da-da-da-da. I was so not prepared for that. And I was like, hey, I need you to take these cases back because I can't deal with this. And of course, you can probably imagine what my boss said. I'll save that because he probably wouldn't want me to repeat it. But I continued working on those files, and I had to figure it out. And you have to learn how to deal with people. And that's not something you do your whole week of client counseling, what, 2nd year? Yeah, you won't be prepared for how to deal with clients when you have that client that does have some mental health issues and they're not on their medication and they call you 35 times a day because you are their outlet and they feel like you're the only person that listens to them. A lot of times with Georgia Legal Services clients, they've gone to several different service agencies before they landed in our office. And by the time they get to us, they have no faith in what we can do because everyone else has told them no or has turned them away, and they feel like we're going to treat them just as poorly as the other agencies have treated them. And so once they get to us, they want to pour everything out. And you have to just kind of establish some boundaries. You know, before I would take the 35 calls. Yes, Mrs. So-and-so, I'm still working on your case. Nothing has changed since you called me 20 minutes ago. I promise I'll call you as soon as we get an update. But as you learn and you grow, you realize you don't have time to do that 35 times in a day. So you kind of use your voicemail. And you let that go to voicemail, and then you make that one call, and you have a nice, friendly but stern conversation with your client and say, listen, I'm working as hard as I can. I promise you that I will call you once I have something. And no, I can't talk to you 35 times a day. Doesn't mean I don't care about you and that I don't care about your case, but it just means that I'm busy working on your case, and the more times I have to stop to take the calls, the less time I have to devote to your case. So that generally kind of helps them regulate their need to contact you all day.
Well, and that points to some of the frustrations that come with the territory with you. Could you talk a little bit about other things that you find challenging or even surprising about what you do, and I know you love what you do, and you've told us why, but it's not all, unicorns and rainbows,
No.
right?
There are days when I look at myself in the mirror and say, why are you here? Why are you doing this? I guess one of my biggest frustrations, client-related frustrations, is the work that I do around the area of domestic violence. And this is something that I had to learn early on. I will spend, time preparing these cases to go to court to help them get a protective order against their abusive partner. And we are getting witnesses together. I'm preparing my examination questions. I'm preparing my I'm just getting in trial mode so that I can go in here and help them get this protective order because he beat the crap out of her or she beat the crap out of him and they need this protection. So I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. No holds barred. And then my client will call me the night before and say, I've decided that I don't want to go forward. I love him. I want to work it out. Or the guy says, it's not that bad. I don't want to break up my family. It's okay. We're just going to work this out. Well, in my head, I'm screaming, are you kidding me? Number one, do you realize how much time I spent preparing this case? Number two, do you realize that this guy or this girl is going to kill you and you may not get a second chance? But then I had to do the research and understand that the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is when she leaves that relationship, when she files that protective order that says, I'm done. I need you to stay away from me. You can't have contact with me for 12 months. That's the most likely time that she will be killed. So who am I to step in and say, oh, no, ma'am, you're not going to dismiss this. You're going to go forward with this case. And then the next week, she's found dead somewhere because she knew that that was going to get him so angry that it would make him reach his breaking point. So that's frustrating. Or when they don't even call to say they don't want to go forward with it. When I get to court and I'm waiting and the judge is calling the case and the judge is looking at me like, Miss Daniel, where's your client? I'm like, yeah, Your Honor, I wish I knew. Can I have a moment to go and call my client? And I go and call and I get no answer. They just don't show up. It happens. Another frustration is we have so many clients that we turn away on a daily basis because we simply do not have the resources to serve the people that need help. They have valid cases, and I hate when the client says, well, you're not taking my case because you think I don't have a good case. That has nothing to do with it. A lot of these folks have great cases. We simply do not have the staff. So we get kind of pigeonholed into doing whatever our funders say we should be doing, i.e., wherever we have grants, that's where we tend to focus our attention. So our huge grant is domestic violence. I have to focus a lot of my attention there. But there may be a great consumer case that comes in for a person that we might be interested in. We can't always take that because it doesn't fall into a specific grant that's covered, that will cover our time to pay us for what we're doing. So that's a huge frustration.
How do you tell a client that you're not going to help them when you're probably the only one that could?
Absolutely. What we try to do is we will give them a reduced fee referral. We have some attorneys in the area that will agree to take cases from us at a reduced fee, not a pro bono basis, but a reduced fee. But for that woman that comes in and her sole income is $700 a month, and she's asking for a divorce to get away from an abusive partner, and the filing fee for the divorce is $280, and not to mention how much a private attorney is going to charge her to do that, she's looking at me like I'm crazy. And so I just have to explain to her, I'm really sorry, I wish I could help you. I can give you a pro se packet and I can try to talk you through it, but I can't file it for you. I can't fill the paperwork out for you. And you have some people with limited proficiency. They can't read well. They don't understand how to fill these papers out. So they kind of get stuck. Like a client that I met with the other day who's been separated from her husband, who is abusive, for 8 years. And she's not gotten a divorce because she doesn't have the money to file for divorce. So she's just kind of stuck in limbo. And they've not lived together for the entire separation, but she's still married. She can't move on with her life if she were to meet someone else because she can't afford to get a divorce. So those are the frustrations that I deal with on a day-to-day basis.
In your interactions with other lawyers, the parties that you're up against do have representation on. Do you find that those other lawyers look on you differently or treat you differently because you're a legal services lawyer, or did that happen early on? What's that like?
I think that was an earlier response to Georgia Legal Aid attorneys. When I first started, I would forever, not even from opposing counsel, but from our own clients would call and say, are y'all real lawyers? And then I'd say, nah, we're just practicing. They didn't get the joke. Half of y'all didn't get it either. we're just practicing. But no, really, the bar is very civil towards us. And I tell you, we get the most respect, I believe, from the judges. Because I've had judges pull me aside after court and say, I love when legal aid is on the other side because I know you all are going to be prepared, I know you're going to be thorough, and I know you know the law. And that speaks volumes for the program that I am tied to. Because when the judges know that they can trust you and they can trust what's coming out of your mouth, your arguments are going to be believable and they're going to be received well. I got in a situation in a county where we were doing a domestic violence case and the issue of child support came up. And the judge signed the order, but he didn't put in an amount for child support. And this was before the child support laws changed. At that time, there was a percentage of the income, what have you. And the judge, after he signed the order, he gave it to me and he said, well, Ms. Daniel, just go in the back and just put in a number for child support and then take it over to the clerk's office and file it. I trust you, just put in whatever. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, you really trust me enough to just put in a number? He didn't ask to see the order again. He just wanted me to deal with it. He didn't have time to deal with it. He was on to his next case. So that speaks volumes because there are some judges that would not trust an attorney to do something like that because their reputation has preceded them and they know, oh, I can't trust her because she'll go in and put $1,000 a month and this guy only makes $1,200. So you really have to work hard to make sure that people give you the respect that you deserve. And legal aid is just another agency. A lot of private attorneys come to us for training in specialized areas that we handle because we do have specialists on staff that do statewide trainings for us so that we're constantly up on the different law changes. So I think it's a good fit.
You've got 5 lawyers for how many counties?
23.
Okay. And you figure that you all are able to handle a pretty small percentage of the needs that are really out there. If I put you in charge, I let you decide what we as a profession are going to do about that, what would you say? What should we do? Anything?
There's a lot that we should do. I totally believe in attorneys taking pro bono cases, but there's a caveat with that. I don't want to force an attorney to take a case. Like, you have a mandatory pro bono case that you have to do. If this is really something that you don't want to do, like that young man that said he does not like the elderly people because they creep him out, and I would not want to make him take a case where he has to zealously represent an elderly person. I just don't feel like that would be doing a great service to that client. That being said, the conversation needs to be had with the private bar so that they understand that the idea of pro bono service is not as bad as you think it is. I have conversations with my friends all the time about taking different cases. Something may come across my desk that we can't handle, but I know it's a great case. I'll call on some of my friends who've never taken cases from Georgia Legal Services, and they give me all kinds of excuses. Your clients are too needy. It's going to take too much time. You know, I don't think they're going to be appreciative of what I do for them if they don't have to pay anything. They should be forced to pay at least something. And when you start to break down those stereotypes, we have an attorney who's retired from the public defender's office, and she now does pro bono work for us on a case-by-case basis, and she absolutely loves it. And she calls me and says, hey, I had this great divorce case, and we ended up having a 4-hour hearing, and it was the best case that I've ever worked on. That makes me feel really good because in the beginning, this attorney was not so sure that she really wanted to do this type of thing. Don't know if I want to do pro bono. It might be more trouble than it's worth. But once the attorneys get in and they actually take a case, and almost all of our cases are feel-good cases, because when you have someone at their lowest point and they have nowhere else to turn, but they know that they have you that will be a mouthpiece for them, it makes all the difference to them. So our clients may not, send us expensive gifts, although I did have a client one year that sent me some Tiffany candle holders I was so impressed. I was like, wow, maybe we should have did a better background check on you to make sure you couldn't afford our services. But our clients will do stuff like they'll bake you a cake or they'll bring you a plant. And that's their way of saying thank you. They may not have a lot, but to them, you really saved them. You helped them out. So they're giving you a token of their appreciation. And that just makes my day. Just the little things, just a card to say, thank you for being there for me when no one else was. It makes it all worthwhile.
Well, of course, the ABA and the Georgia Bar encourage lawyers to do pro bono, but don't require it. And what I gather your view on that is that it shouldn't be required for the sake of the clients.
Right. That's just my opinion, because if you force someone, I think about the old system when I first started, when you became a lawyer and you got put on that indigent defense list.
For criminal defense.
For criminal defense. And thank God I was exempt from that because I was with Georgia Legal Services. We don't do any criminal work. But I can't imagine having come out of law school, not knowing anything, having no desire to do criminal work whatsoever. I can't imagine being handed a criminal case and told to go off and figure it out. I mean, I would have. I'm sure I would have eventually gotten it. But that was not my passion. That was something I never, ever, ever, ever want to do. So why force me to do that? But the flip side is, some people, if you don't force them, they will never do it, and they will never know the joys of pro bono representation. So it's a mixed bag, for sure. I think, again, if we educate the private bar as far as what would be involved, we provide training for them in the area of the case that they're working on so that they feel comfortable. Because sometimes it's just fear. You don't want to take this protective order case because you don't know how to do it. Well, guess what? I've been doing it for 12 years. I'll sit down with you. I'll walk you through it. I'll provide you with all the forms that you need. I'll get you set up. You'll be good to go. When you put them in their comfort zone, they're more apt to take whatever case you're asking them to take.
Well, I think training helps with that. But another response to that that view of mandatory pro bono is that, you know, even if they're not totally invested in the case, even if it's this young man that doesn't like the elderly, they're better than nothing.
Absolutely.
And nothing is really the alternative.
I really wish that you all would have an opportunity to just go in and sit in court on any given day, especially like magistrate court, where there are a lot of housing evictions right down the street. Whenever you have some free time, I know you have a lot of that in your first year, just sit in one day and see the number of people that come in, number one, unrepresented, and see how they're received by the court. It's really sad to say that if you come in by yourself and you cannot articulate clearly within the first minute of standing up and opening your mouth, the likelihood that you will be successful in your case goes way down. But if you come in there and you have an attorney who may not know a hill of beans about eviction or housing law, he is there to articulate. He is your mouthpiece. Now the judge says, okay, I have someone who can coherently speak to me and can explain to me that Mr. So-and-so is not late on his rent, and in fact he has all of his receipts, whereas Mr. So-and-so is up there with his Kroger bag and he's got these receipts in this bag and he's saying, Judge, I have it all here. How many judges are going to take the time to sit there and stop court and go through all those receipts? They're not going to do it. But if you have a mouthpiece that speaks for you, any of you can go in there and say, hey, Judge, he has his receipts. I've gone through. He has every receipt from this time to this time. The judge is going to listen to you. And that case is going to be successful for that person, whereas if he goes in by himself, he's going to be evicted.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. One of the things the students are talking about in their discussion groups this week is mandatory pro bono, but for lawyers. But the other one is something that actually has now been adopted in New York State, where in order to be admitted to the bar, as a condition of admission, you must have done a certain number of hours of pro bono. So, for example, law students under the supervision of a faculty member. Now that you're a member of a bar and not a law student, how do you feel about making the law students do pro bono?
I absolutely love that idea. I do. Because we have a lot of students that come through Georgia Legal Services, and I think the experience that they gain is invaluable. Because we actually put our law students to work. It's not one of those situations where you're in a room and you're making copies all day. We have our law students actually handling administrative hearings. They do unemployment hearings. They do food stamp hearings. Once you become a third year, you can go in and into court and do the protective orders where you could have a full hearing, you know, opposed by opposing counsel and everything. I think that's a learning ground, and law students are ready to be molded and shaped. And I think a lot of law students would welcome that, because one of the things that you realize when you get out is you kind of feel like law school has not really prepared you for the practice of law. Law school teaches you how to think and how to analyze and how to write, but you actually have to do the practical side of being a lawyer in order to know what you're doing and to get comfortable in doing that. And I think that would be an excellent idea.
So it's good for the law students.
Absolutely.
Good
and
for
great
the
for the clients. Great for the clients. Because again, now you have a mouthpiece. You might not know what the heck you're talking about when you get started, but you can deduce what is the problem for that client, and you can speak for that client and help articulate that to the bench.
You've got some folks in this room and in the room next door who either came to law school thinking they wanted to do what you do, or are beginning to think that they want to do it. Now, it's not everybody,
Right.
you know, but there are some. Addressing those students particularly, now I'm going to open this up and make it broader in a minute, but addressing those students particularly, what would you say to them as they contemplate trying to do the kind of work that you do when they're out of law school?
I would say figure out what your motivation is for doing that type of work. Why do you think you want to go into public interest service? Are you a patient person? Are you an understanding person? Can you kind of fit in to any situation? If you're somebody who likes an exciting challenge and you want something different every day, Georgia Legal Services or a legal aid program would be a good fit because we handle so many different types of cases. We're not, you go to a private law firm, you may be in the real estate section and you're going to do real estate work and that's it. And you might die doing real estate work. If that's what you want to do, that's great, go for it. But you come into Georgia Legal Services and you might get assigned a custody case, a housing case, you're going to work with an elderly person, you're going to have a consumer case, and you might be working on an unemployment appeal. Where else are you going to get that type of knowledge? And not to say that everybody's going to be a career legal services or legal aid attorney, but you come in and you get that great wealth of experience, and if you decide, hey, you know what, I've done this for a while, I want to do something different, you can take that skill set anywhere and know that, gosh, I have a little bit of knowledge here, I've got some here, I've got some there, put it all together, and you make yourself a lot more attractive package for someone who's looking to hire you.
All right, and one of the responses probably would be, what about the money? I mean, you're not getting rich as a Georgia Legal Services lawyer, clearly. This is not an area where lawyers make an enormous amount of money. These students, most of them carry enormous debt as they come out of law school. How would you address that with them, that concern? Because you may have students here, this is it, I really want to do this, Tomieka inspired me, I want to be like Tomieka. I can't afford to be like Tomieka because I've got $100,000 in debt.
Sure you can. I came out in the same position. I was like, wow, where am I going to go with all this debt? One of the great things about the legal aid arena is they understand that the salaries are not the greatest. You know, I'm not poor, living on the side of the road, but I'm not making what my friends at K&S are making, or, you know, the Austin and Birds. I'm definitely not there. Of course, I don't work the hours that they work either. I do have a life, and I do generally leave the office at 5 o'clock. But we have student loan reimbursement, which is wonderful. The way our program works is we pay the first $100 every month, and then the program pays 75% of the remaining payment. And that's for the entire time that you work at legal aid until your loans are paid off. So that right there was, I was like, ding, 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 where do I sign up? You're going to pay 75% of this monthly payment? And they stick true to their word. I got hired, I guess I got my offer in October before graduation, so I knew where I was going. They paid for my bar prep classes, they paid for my bar fees, and they gave me a month free paid study time. So I was getting a paycheck while I was studying for the bar. I had no worries. You know, I was feeling really, really confident because I knew where I was going and I knew who was paying for it. Now, again, the salary is not the greatest, but there are different perks. You get mileage reimbursement. Like I explained, we travel a lot. We go around to different counties. I cover 5 counties myself. So you do get reimbursed for your mileage. They pay for your CLEs. I don't ever have to pay for the mandatory CLEs that you have to get every year because the program pays for that. They pay for you to be admitted into the local bar associations. They pay your bar dues every year. So there are perks because they understand that, hey, we can't pay you a great exorbitant amount of money, but we will take care of you. Excellent health care plan. I have this wonderful scar here. I had surgery. This is probably my 4th surgery since I've been with the program. I've had different issues, but this last time I had a disc that was ruptured in my neck. I was out of work for 2 months. The program basically paid, I'd say 98% of the $28,000 bill that I got from this surgery. And one thing that you have to really focus on is when I was out for those 2 months, I wasn't concerned about whether or not I was going to have a job when I got back. I wasn't concerned about how my bosses were going to look at me and were they thinking that I was a slacker because, you know, I had this big collar on for 2 months and I couldn't be here. I had no worries because I knew that my job was secure. It's that family type atmosphere where you're not caught up in that rat race of billable hours. We're looking at you as a whole, and you take the time that you need to get well, and then when you're well, then you come back and you continue doing the job that you do. So I came back the 1st of December and I hit the ground running.
You mentioned a couple of times that you have a life outside the office, and no matter what kind of law you do, it can become all-encompassing. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of that, of finding some balance between your professional life and your personal life, and how you've been able to do that?
Absolutely. I just recently read an article that it was on suicide, actually, and it said that lawyers were at the top with rates of suicide. It is a very stressful profession, and you really have to figure out what it is that you like to do. Same with law school. I give the same spiel when I come in and speak to law students. You have to figure out what your outlet is. A typical day at Georgia Legal Services for me, and your hours are flexible as an attorney because as life changes, things change. When I was single, I would get in the office at 7 or 7:30 because I'm a morning person. But by 3:30, I was like, yeah, I'm about to go because I've had enough. I'm tired. You know, it's been a long day. I'm not an evening type person. But my hours are moved back a little bit. I normally get in around 8:30. I'm normally out of the office by 5 o'clock unless I have something specific that I'm working on. I don't work on the weekends, again, unless I have some big trial that I'm working on. That's just not something that is expected at Georgia Legal Services. But believe that when I'm there, I'm getting my job done. And in 7 hours, I may get done what it takes some people to do 12 hours worth of work. Because when I'm there, I'm getting it done. But if I want to take off in the afternoon to go see a program at my daughter's school, then I can do that. And there's no problem with that. Or last week with the snowstorm, my daughter's school was closed Tuesday through Friday. Tuesday through Friday. And I stayed at home. And it wasn't a problem. I didn't have that pressure of, you have to be here. You know, I have a 4-year-old. I can't bring her into the office and be productive. It's just not going to happen. I'm figuring that out really quickly because I've tried once. That will never happen again. But they understand that you do have a life, and life outside of the office is encouraged. So they want you to be involved in the local bar association. They want you to be a part of the Young Lawyers Division. They want you to take leadership roles in these areas, and they will pay for you to do so that you can develop your skills and develop your networking, because all that networking often leads to other pro bono attorneys, because you meet them, you work with them, you tell them why you're passionate about what you do, and they start to feel that passion. And then they say, well, hey, you know what? Tomieka's not so bad. Maybe I will consider a case when she calls me. And that one case turns into 3 cases for the year, and they get benefits for taking cases from us as well. So it's kind of a circle. It runs, you take care of you, and they take care of you.
The last question I always ask folks that come visit with us is an open-ended one. It's, you know, you've got this captive audience here, first-year law students. You're now 12 years out, and I'm just wondering if you have any words of wisdom for them, any advice, anything maybe you wish you had heard as a first-year law student. Give them the benefit of your experience.
Don't take yourself so seriously. I did not enjoy law school. I will be perfectly honest with you. For those of you that are in here and you think that law school is the best thing that ever happened to you, great for you. I was not that chick. That was not me. Did not enjoy, especially the first year. It got better the second and third year. I got really active in some student organizations that helped me understand that there is life outside of law school. But when you get out of law school, you look back and you realize that there really is a method to the madness. We had a great professor that you all do not have the benefit of knowing, but Professor Kozik was a first-year instructor, and he was hard and he was scary, and I swear I had nightmares about that man. But you get in his class and you could not use pronouns. You're briefing your case, you're called upon, it's your day, and don't get up there and say, well, he and she and I think, because he'd rip you apart. But I tell you, to this day, I will sit in court and I will listen to other attorneys present their case, and I can pretty much pinpoint who had Professor Kozik and who didn't, because I listen to the way they present. And if they're stopping, well, Your Honor, well, I think, in my head, I'm automatically saying, I bet he did not have Professor Kozik, because he would have remembered you don't do that. And it makes sense. It didn't make sense as a first year because I just thought he was being a jerk and he was just mean. But when you go out, the judge doesn't have time for that. Your clients start to think that you don't know what you're talking about because you sound unintelligent. So there is a method for the madness here. Form bonds now, because these bonds will carry you throughout your legal career. By the same token, what you do here will follow you. So if you're known as that person who never wanted to help anybody, who always tried to hide the ball and hide resources, you'll be remembered for that. If you were that person that was shady and nobody could depend on you and you always showed up late and whenever you were called on, you always said something stupid, you're probably not going to get a lot of referrals from your classmates. Because I remember those folks too, and I'm like, yeah, no, I can't send this person to them because I just don't trust that they'll do a good job. So believe it or not, what you do stays with you. The administration is watching you, whether or not you realize that. And it amazes me to this day, knowing that I did not love law school, but I get called upon every year by Mercer Law School in some different form or fashion, not just Professor Longan, to do something, to represent the law school, to come and give back to the students. If you find yourself in that position, I think it's really important that you do that. Because when you've been blessed to do some great things, you want to share that with others. I was scared to death sitting where you are right now. I was scared to death. I didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't think I was supposed to be an attorney. I was like, God, why are you taking me through this? I'm not supposed to be here. But I promise you, the practice of law is nothing like law school. It's stressful, but it's fun. There's a means to an end, and you get to see that you are effectuating change in your community and your clients' lives, and it makes everything worthwhile. So just hang in there. Don't go through law school being an island. I didn't do the whole study group thing until I was studying for the bar. And once I did it, I was like, wow, why didn't I do this my first year? I probably would have graduated with a higher... Yeah, okay. Don't wait until then. You don't want to wait until then. And I will tell you this, I did not have stellar grades in law school, but that issue has never come up. I interviewed with Georgia Legal Services. It was not an issue. When you go to these bar luncheons and you're standing before the judge arguing your case, the judge is not going to say, what was your class rank? They don't care, because my work speaks for itself. And the judges know, gosh, that Tomieka, she's always on time. She's always prepared. She always has a good argument. Those are the types of things that they know. So it doesn't matter where you fall in the scheme of things. What you do as a person, how you represent yourself, how prepared you are, that's the type of thing that people are going to remember about you.
That's all real good advice. Let me turn it over to the students. What questions do you have for Tomieka? Right here.
Kind of what you were saying about actually, can you tell us what you look for, like in the baby lawyers, like the people who come to Georgia Legal Services or any type of organization like that, more than just the personal qualities of being patient or wanting to help people? Like, do you look for something that they do in the summer, or what are you really looking for?
For purposes of the recording, I'm going to repeat that. The question is basically, what are you looking for the young lawyers that come to your office and want to work in the office? What kinds of things are you looking for in them?
We look at your background to see what is your interest in legal services. You say that you want to be a legal aid lawyer and you've not done any type of public service work. You've not done any volunteer work. I'm a little skeptical. I'm like, why now? And I will ask that question because I really want to know. One thing about our program is we put a lot of resources into developing you to become great lawyers. We don't want to waste those resources on someone who only plans to be with us for 2 years. So real is real. I'm not going to waste time if you're really not in it to be here, for a couple of years beyond 2 years. I also look for self-starters. When we have interns in our office that just kind of sit back in the office and wait for somebody to give them a project, I'm taking notes because I'm just like, you're not a self-starter. When I was an intern, I went around to each attorney if I didn't have any work, and I said, hey, can I help you? Can I help you? I went around to the paralegals. Can I help you? You have a hearing next week I saw on your calendar. Can I go with you? I just want to shadow you. That shows me that you really take an interest in what you're doing, not the person that sits in their office and is on Facebook or on Twitter all day or doing their homework in their office. Because, I mean, I understand you have stuff to do, but especially in a program like ours, there's so much work to be done. There's always something that you can do. But we're normally so busy in our own routine, you have to kind of remind us, hey, I'm here to help you. What can I do for you? So definitely somebody who takes some initiative to try to find out what we do at our program and how they think they could be a good fit for our office.
What else?
Are you taking interns this summer?
We're always taking interns, always, and I have some cards here, as I remember from last year. I didn't have many, but yeah, we're always taking interns because, like I said, there is a tremendous need, and the more hands we have on deck. I mean, you know, there are 5 attorneys, so we can't have 15 interns, but we are always looking for interns.
Can you talk a little bit about the Dan Bradley Fellowship?
And I think that interview is coming up soon. The Dan Bradley Fellowship is the summer of your 2nd year, where you come in and you intern with Georgia Legal Services. It's a partnership with the law school and Georgia Legal Services. We generally try to have 2 Dan Bradley interns. And you will come in and you will get thrown into a caseload. You will sit with us at our weekly, what we call our case consideration meeting, which I think is an excellent learning ground for interns and new lawyers. That's when we bring in all of the cases that have come to the office for the week, and we talk about the facts of the case, we talk about the law, and we basically figure out strategies on what whoever's going to be assigned that case, different things that they could work on, like, hey, don't forget to check this issue, or you should research this, or you should go and find this witness and ask them X, Y, Z. So that was a wonderful experience for me, and I fell in love with legal services that summer, and I knew that I had to be there.
And the fellowship gets them paid a little bit.
You get paid a little bit. It's not a lot. It's definitely, and I don't even know how much it is anymore.
It varies.
Gosh, when I was the Dan Bradley, I got $4,000 for the summer, and I was like, really? But it was the best experience ever. And like I said, it led to a job because I got in there, I showed them that I really wanted this job and that I could do this job and that I could be depended upon. And, you know, I got an offer in October.
What other questions?
You gotta have questions. I've been up almost all night with my 4-year-old who decided that she didn't want to go to sleep and she was too hyped from the Super Bowl. So you gotta have questions because I'm sleepy. I need some energy. What's something you really want to know about Georgia Legal Services or legal aid? Nothing.
When someone calls you the night before trial and says that they want to not go through with it, and then they call you later and say that they do want to go through with it, how do you deal with that?
That never happens. It's so frustrating, but you have to understand that they're going through cycles because when they called me the first time and said they didn't want to do it, they were making up with whoever. And between that phone call and whatever happened the next morning, he pissed her off again, or she pissed him off again, and now it's back on. Doesn't really happen that much. To that extent, we normally have more time in between for them to change their mind back and forth. But we do have to be stern with our clients and say, listen, I have other resources that I could be devoting to other cases, so if you really don't want to go forward with this case, I need to know. Always memorialize it in writing because your client may get amnesia and come back, 2 months later and say, what happened to my case? I didn't tell you why I wanted to dismiss it. So you kind of have to do a little CYA as well, but just good professional courtesy, making sure that you keep in contact with your client and let them know what's going on at every stage of the litigation.
Is there one in the back? I'm sorry.
Would you say your job is very different than the public working in the public defender's office?
Talking about the difference between what you do and working in the public defender's office.
I know one major glaring difference is our caseload. I have friends in the PD's office that may carry a caseload of about 120 cases at any one given time, and the average caseload in our office is probably about 30. Huge difference. I couldn't imagine having to juggle 120 cases at one time. But you still get that same rewarding type, we're kind of the last resort, you're there for them. If you don't have a problem with criminal law, that's your thing, hey, you go for it. It's still feel-good work that makes you appreciate the legal system. You're taking time to deal with people who no one else would even listen to that may actually have a very good case, but because they're not packaged the way most people want you to be packaged, they're stinky. You know, some of my clients come in and they don't smell good. Some of my clients are homeless. They're sleeping under a bridge, so yeah, they're going to smell pretty bad. And yeah, sometimes I do have to leave the door open in the interview room because I can't breathe otherwise. But guess what? That's still a human being. And he or she deserves my utmost respect, and I will not disrespect them because they're having issues. You know, we've had situations where I had a client who came in and she's talking to me about a domestic violence situation, but in the conversation she tells me that she hasn't eaten in 2 days. And so I'm not going to just be heartless and keep going on with my agenda, even though I know I have 4 other clients that are waiting to see me. I need to investigate why you haven't eaten for 2 days, and then you tell me that you don't have any food and you don't have any money to get the food. And, you know, I'm not expecting you to do this, but that day I took a trip to the grocery store with my client and bought some groceries and took them to her house and then set her up with services to make sure that that didn't happen again. So you kind of have to, sometimes you put your agenda to the side and you deal with whatever issues pop up because that's what's pressing. I can't always help you. You know, my clients come in and say, well, my rent is $800. Hey, I can't help you. I work for legal aid. I'm sorry. But guess what? I can give you a list of churches that you can call and they might be able to help you. If you call all these churches, maybe each one of them can give you $100 and you can come up with this much rent. Now let's talk about how we can keep you from getting in this position again.
What else? Well, Tomieka's agreed to stay for a few minutes for those of you who want to chat with her, you know, one-on-one. But join me in thanking Tomieka.